Well, dude, I mean, I think the fucking thing we should start with is what's going on in India right now. I think that's kind of what every leftist across the globe really should be looking at. We're looking at one of the largest worker strikes, general strikes in human history. I mean, I've seen estimations of 250 million people participating in these strikes, largely led by, I believe, 10 unions and in coalition with a lot of the farmers of India. And it's crazy. Just to put that into perspective for people, 250 million fucking people. It's absolutely crazy. California doesn't even have 40 million people in it. So if you take all of the people in California and you put them in a strike, that's not even 20% of the strike size. It's astronomical, dude. It's crazy. Okay, so if you take like half of the it's more than half the population of the United States that participated in these general strikes, which I just think is hugely, inspirational and something that, Gavin, we always look and point to places like Spain and France for their willingness to, organize and strike. But here is just another clear example of the United States just being outdone, in another part of the world, and showing that we really need to get our act together as far as organizing and getting people into the streets.
Yeah, that's a great point too, especially about how we always do, mention the likes of France and Spain and other European countries for kind of models of direct action and general strikes and, holding up the workforce to make demands heard. But you're absolutely right that here we have India, which is, often kind of thought of as more of a developing country by, us Americans. But they've pulled off, as you said, perhaps the largest strike in history. So this is absolutely insanity. And as this Zac Gavin article notes, the mainstream media in India and the mainstream media here in the West has barely mentioned it. I think there was like maybe one Guardian article, one CNN article, but outside of that, this has not received.
Yeah, you would be forgiven if you were just first hearing about it, listening to our show, which is crazy. Yeah. That this massive uprising, this immense display of worker solidarity and, sort of bottom up demands. And the other thing that I think is really imperative that we pay attention to on the left and that we learn from the Indian general strike of 2020, as it's been, dubbed, as far as the things I've seen circling around it on the internet. I don't know another name for it, just a mass general strike in India. Yeah. But they have demands, clear demands. There's 10 demands of these, 7 demands of these people striking. And I just wanted to go over them with everybody because I think it's so important that the demands for any general strike are clear, they're explicit, and that everybody is, willing to, kind of go to bat for them. So the first being a direct cash transfer of 7,500 rupees, which is about 101 US dollars, to all families who earn less than the income tax threshold, 10 kilograms of free grain ration per person every month to any individual in need, expansion of the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, basically to guarantee employment for people in rural parts of India. And that currently lasts for 100 days. They're demanding that that's expanded to 200 days in rural areas, and also a bolstering of the wages. And they want to expand the program to urban areas to cover, the unemployment, obviously, that's been that always has existed in poor parts of India, but also, this COVID impact and the economic devastation of COVID is being felt worldwide. They've demanded that withdrawal from all anti-worker labor code changes and anti-farmer laws. They want to stop the privatization of public sector corporations, including those in the finance sector, stopping the corporatization of government-run manufacturing and service entities and railroads, ordnance manufacturers, ports, and farming, so agriculture. Withdraw the draconian circular of forced premature retirement of government. So basically they can't, they want to make it illegal so that you can't be like, oh, you're 55, like you're old, sorry, you have to retire. Basically banning forced premature retirement from government and all public sector jobs. And then providing a pension to all, restoring what was called an earlier version of the EPS 95, which from what I understand is just analogous to like a social security in India, essentially like a pension program for people to retire on. So those are their demands. They're explicit.
And as it says here too, this March, the strike was a continuation of protests that erupted in September when the national legislature basically pushed through these controversial bills that opened up the agricultural sector to large corporate and financial interests. So basically, this is in response to the Modi government's neoliberal, increasing corporate tendency to outsource these kind of jobs to corporations, which is obviously a trend we see all over the globe, definitely here in America. But it's definitely inspiring to see that this isn't something that's just totally out of our hands as a populace, as a workforce. In India, the farmers, the working class has banded together to protest what is obviously this neoliberal horseshit order from, like I said, the right-wing government of Modi, who's basically bent on corporatizing.
Following a very American economic model, right? Yeah. Like, there's a reason that Modi and Trump, they're on the same wavelength, right? Outside of their, fake, I don't know what you want to call it, like fake populism, authoritarianism, that you see replicated in other places like Marie Le Pen and what's his fucking name in Hungary.
I forget, but also Bolsonaro in Brazil.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a broader thing. It's not just the United States and India, obviously. But yeah, and the other thing that I wanted to talk about with this specifically, and it's something that you and I have kind of brushed on over the course of this podcast quite a bit, is the need for the American left to really rekindle in honestly foster for the first time in over 100 years a real relationship with farmers and make agrarian politics center to left politics, right? Because if you're not working with the actual working class and you're not working with the actual farmers, one, you're never going to have. So this is the thing. This is a democracy in this country. You have to have popular support if you want to win. I don't want to have some theoretical horseshit argument where it's like, well, the people can't ever fuck. Like, no, fuck you. The people can and will make their decisions in this country. And that's something I firmly believe. And I think you also believe, because these people, left ideas are populist ideas because they're popular ideas, because they can affect everybody from a bottom up. And I think that without getting farmers, which make up so much of the electorate in this country, and also skewed power because of the electoral college, you can never win elections without them. And it's not hard to earn their vote, right? We have to ask for it. We have to build a bond, and we have to say, look, you guys are getting fucked by the same things in middle America, heartland America, where Gavin and I are recording this kind of thing, as people who are getting fucked in Silicon Valley and Los Angeles and New York City, right? We're all getting fucked by monopolies. We're all getting fucked by either big tech, Amazon, or you're getting fucked by big agriculture, right? You're getting fucked by Monsanto's. You're getting fucked by all these other monolith corporations that need to be broken up and need to be constrained, and the people need to have more control over them, right? This is something that it's not even an argument with any of these people. We're starting in mind, and we're already agreeing on so much. So, putting that step forward, I think it's a no-brainer that we, work to kindle this kind of at least an alliance with the farming and that agrarian communities across this country, if we're ever going to be viable as a left. This cannot be insular to our urban metropolises.
Yeah, and also just making the point, what the increased intense corporatization of these industries leads to, especially during the time of COVID. We were obviously just covering the story on last week's news dump about the Tyson farm, where the managers were literally gambling on how many workers would get COVID. So it seems like now is the perfect time to kind of make these calls, make these demands, and like you said, form these coalitions that are going to be necessary to actually combat this rising tide of corporate, basically authoritarianism over the workers. And I think the strike in India is just such a inspirational and optimistic sign that it is possible. Obviously, we're very different countries, India and America, and I believe that they probably have a little bit more of a robust union,
it was run by 10 pretty powerful union. I mean, not powerful, but like robust unions.
Which is
also powerful. I mean, they've got 250 million fucking people out there, but I just meant it's not like Modi's listening to the fucking unions.
Sure. But that's something that we also need to work on here in America, is strengthening our unions, making sure to combat the corporate propaganda against unions, because that is a big a piece of this puzzle that does help to enable this kind of direct action, these kind of strikes to be successful. Because if you just try to engineer it, through social media, as we've seen over and over again, that largely fails. It's not, successful. There's not enough, clarity to the demands. There's not enough unity or solidarity with among the various factions of the working class that it would need to get the message out to do something like this. So I think there's a lot to learn from this story.
100%. And the fastest rate of union growth of the 20th century occurred between 1933, right? Guess who came into office? And 1941. So that union private in the private sector, it tripled. Okay, so that would be, if that was to happen right now, we would go from having 6% of the private sector represented by a union, which is the paltry state that it's in now, to in 8 years in 2028 having to represent nearly 20%. So that's a fifth of the workforce. That is power then, right? You know what I'm saying? And it's not where you would want to be. You would want to see 38 45% would be real. Then you're talking about you're really representing the workers having real power. Then you can start really implementing things like workplace democracy, which that would only expand worker involvement in decision making and that sort of thing. That just kind of leads me into this my next kind of question, which is, if the United States was to effectively organize a general strike, what would the demands be in your view?
Well, I think that the number one demand right now, at least in the pandemic, should be, well, God, and that's a tough one for me. And I go back and forth between it because I think depending on your personal situation, either of these things could be more useful to you. But I think the two essentials are obviously Medicare for all and universal basic income. If you have if you have medical conditions that are maybe costing a lot of money, obviously the Medicare is going to be a little bit more important. Whereas if you're relatively healthy and don't necessarily need immediate attention, I think that the $1,000 a month or more would probably be more beneficial. But either way, I think both of those demands are just so fucking necessary going forward, especially in the pandemic, especially as we see these eviction moratoriums coming up. And I think that World Traveler 198 makes the great point here in the live chat that healthcare is still tied to our work, and that a lot of the reason why these strikes don't happen here in the States is because people are still willing to take the abuse to protect their livelihoods. And that's so unfortunate and so true. And
that's also a tremendous one of the big reasons why we have that here. That's not an accident.
Yeah, I was about to say that. It's one of the biggest reasons why we don't have universal single payer healthcare, is because then it would enable people to actually use their labor as a token, as a bargaining chip in order to strengthen their own personal rights as workers, as citizens. Same reason we don't have universal college to help people or help funnel the military industrial complex. So I think that's a great point, and something that also needs to be addressed. And that's probably ultimately why I think that healthcare is even maybe more important than universal basic income, because it is so true that for so many people they have jobs they hate, and they just stay in those jobs they hate their entire lives because they literally have no choice. They have to. People need healthcare, and especially if you have pre-existing conditions, especially if you
or a loved one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we were talking about that with like how Jesse Ventura wanted to run for
or Chris Hedges. These aren't guys that are like starving.
No, yeah, these guys have a lot more money than your average American citizen, but even they were like, well, I can't just give up my healthcare to do this thing. Like I need, like, what if I have an emergency? And I mean, I think that's a big part of this too.
Yeah, for me, I had Medicare for all, UBI, homes guarantee, cut the military budget at least 20%, cancel consumer debt, defund the police, and abolish ICE. Those were my 7 that I replaced with. And I think that if you were going to create a diverse, robust outpouring of worker generally striking, covering all people, right? Because we talked about this when we were speaking the other day with Carlos Menchaca about, we need a robust workforce, and we need things that cover everybody regardless of your immigration status. Because when we are talking about the left and we're talking about the working class, we're talking about everybody regardless of their immigration status. I couldn't give a single fuck what your immigration status is in this country. You know what I mean? Like, a person's a person. Like, let's make that clear. Like it's almost like, it's like if you we can't be even considering that. This has to be universal programs that cover anybody whose feet are on this soil that need them, right? This should be understood.
Especially during a pandemic when everyone's health is, important to protecting their fellow neighbor. So
exactly. And you need people to stay inside and stay home, which is why a homes guarantee is important. Because guess what? People can't stay home if they don't fucking have one.